right. Welcome to Kinky Knots Cafe's Proactive is the Way. Proactive is the Way is a podcast brought to you by two sisters who dove into the health and wellness industry, one plan and the other by fate. We have joined forces to bring to you authentic conversations about our personal experiences as it relates to managing our health, working within the industry, and taking our combined knowledge to share with you some golden nuggets that you can take with you to live the best version of you. Over the next year, we will host 2 episodes a month. And each month, we will focus on a topic that is designed to increase an awareness of tools and resources to enhance an aspect of your mind, body, and spirit. Our topic this month, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Men are born soft and supple. Dead, they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead, they are brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and stiff will be broken. The soft and supple will prevail. By LAO TZU. So last week, we aired out our dirty laundry and shared a piece of our lives with you. We discussed ways in which we managed to tackle self-improvement and where we faltered along the way. As with most people, we navigated blindly, and while we have both found success, we wish we would have had a guide like James Clear to lead us there more effectively. Lucky for you, our goal is to help you to take a more proactive approach in managing your life. We hope that you will find value in our discussions today and take with you some golden nuggets to help you along the way to creating and finding success within your life. Today, we are just going to touch the surface of this book, Atomic Habits, as we discuss the fundamentals, the science of a habit, and 4 simple steps to creating a new good habit and breaking a bad one. We're going to talk about how to go from good to great and what we can do to make good habits stick. So before we begin, Tiffany, I have a question for you. On a scale of 1 to 5 stars, with 5 being it was on fire, a must-have, how many stars would you give James Clear's book, Atomic Habits?
I would give it a 5. As a matter of fact, I was so enthusiastic about reading this book, and it ignited a fire in me that I went and I subscribed to his weekly newsletter. So now I'm receiving his weekly newsletter. I subscribe to him on Twitter. I subscribe to him on Instagram, which, I'm not even on social media, but I do go there to look and see what he has. He does a weekly Thursday inspiration or a weekly Thursday thought, and also a question that provokes insight for your day or even for your week. And so, yeah, I would give this a 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I gave it a 5 too. I was like, I think what makes an author great in this whole self-help genre is how well one can connect a topic personally, and then how well they can connect it to their audience. And, the manner in which James used the plight of other organizations and people's lives to overcoming obstacles, it really helped me to grasp the overall concepts highlighted. And it made it really enjoyable to read. I literally, Tiffany, in the mornings, I couldn't wait to hop on my treadmill and start reading these pearls of wisdom in which James dropped on us. It was definitely enlightening.
It
Um,
was powerful. And how he because I really like science, and how he integrated neuroscience into this, how he made it applicable. Yeah, you're right about him. He really knows how to connect with his audience, a variety of different
a
audiences.
variety, yeah, it was awesome. So, all
And he
right, because
captured that
yeah,
well.
he was on point with that. So let's go ahead. We're going to take some time. We're going to unpack some of these pearls. We started off last week unpacking some of those pearls and just a little bit, but now we're just going to dive a little bit deeper. Okay. And so I'm going to pull up my presentation, share my screen here with you all, and hopefully you have the ability to see. Here we have the presentation, Atomic Habits by James Clear. And we are going to start by focusing on our learning checklist today. What do we hope to get out of our discussions here today? We'll cover the fundamentals, where we'll dive into some concepts that James highlighted. We'll talk about the science of a habit, and the four-step process to creating a good habit and breaking bad ones. We'll close things up with how do we go from being good to great? And then how to make it all last, how to make those habits finally stick. All right, so as we talk about the fundamentals of a habit, if you will, the fundamentals, one of the things that I wanted to start off with was a quote that James Clear shared. He stated that progress requires unlearning. And becoming the best version of ourselves or yourself, it requires you to continuously edit your beliefs and to upgrade and expand your identity. So, underneath, as we highlight the fundamentals, we're going to discuss here within the fundamentals the 1% rule. We'll also cover here goals versus systems. And then we'll wrap things up with outcome based versus identity based when we are trying to form a new habit. All right, so the 1% rule. I'll start with another quote that James Clear provided. He indicated massive success does not require massive action. If we can take the approach of improving just 1% daily, the effects of those small improvements will be more meaningful within our lives over time and eventually shape us into who we want to become or not become. The compounding of these small changes, keep in mind they can be positive or negative. So essentially, he highlighted in this particular area this ideology, if you will, it can work for you or against you. And Tiffany, I just wanted to get your thoughts overall. What did you think about that whole ideology of the 1% rule?
I thought that was genius to break it down. With any thought, with any progress that you're trying to make, if you break it down in parts, you're more likely to be successful, to progress, or not even just to be successful, you're more likely to progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way that he utilized that, um, thought, um, or presented it to us, was really genius to me. I connected with the way he broke that down and said that, um, just improvement daily, taking small steps. But we've, what is amazing, and I said this the last time we met, is that certain people can take the things that we are doing daily, that we're already doing, and make it so simple, so much more simpler when they are explaining it. And I think that's what James Clear did here with the 1% theory that he presented.
It definitely was something that was genius. I said it actually helped to remind me of the whole notion of when I was talking to you a couple episodes back about my whole Tupperware situation, but just how you have to take things in small bites, and it doesn't have to be massive, right? It doesn't have to be this grandiose endeavor initially. I
Right.
think he talked about, the compounding of these small habits that over time, these habits will continuously help with your improvement, right?
Mm-hmm.
He highlighted something that really resonated with me during this is how he talked about uh, the bad habits. And while he was talking about the bad habits, all I kept thinking about was, how these bad habits, they in themselves compound, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can sneak up on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Because
when
let me stop you there. Think of from a health standpoint, because that's my expertise.
Mhm,
How people smoke, how people drink,
mhm,
how people gain weight
mhm,
when we're talking about bad habits.
right.
But go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So how they just kind of creep up on you and you're like, "Oh my goodness, what happened?" And when they do creep up on you, they compound and it could be good or bad, but I'll reference the bad ones here first. They can compound and they can bring about stress, right? They'll bring about negative thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and he mentioned even outrage. But on the flip side, with these habits, if we can think about it, taking them bite size, doing that whole ideology of that 1% rule, improving
Mm-hmm.
little by little, they can compound and be productive. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
where we will see or profit from productivity, where we will improve based on our knowledge, and relationally we can see improvements there. So this whole 1% rule, it can either work for you or it can work against you. And I like the whole idea of when we do focus on that 1% rule and we do see those behaviors compounding gradually, and when we are using it in that manner, we will be able to get ahead of ourselves and we'll be able to address issues that are on the horizon so much more effectively. It's definitely a benefit for us to do it in that fashion.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you why for bad habits, why the 1% compounds so much, or it's easier, is because of the skewed perspective we have for things to come rapidly. Like if you look at the type of world that we live in, everything is for instant gratification. So when you're thinking again of health wise, when you're thinking of weight, right? Food, instant gratification. I can just go right now. I can go down, hey, I want a coffee. I can go down in less than 2 minutes and get me a coffee made the way I want it made. Or and I'm packing on the pounds
Mm-hmm,
because of the sugar.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now we got dispensaries. You can do the same thing. Like within 2 minutes, I can walk into a dispensary and I can, develop my marijuana habit. Um,
Yeah.
so with and that's how the 1% is in speaking to bad habits, but you can identify that one easier than you could with developing a good habit, but you'll touch on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you are right. That whole idea of instant gratification, it made me, as you were speaking, think marketers. I'm telling you, this world of marketing is so good, to get you into a place where you just are, you can develop bad habits super quick.
Yeah, it's easy. It's
Because
easier to develop a bad habit.
we have an addictive mind, right? We have an
Mhm.
addictive mind that wants to be, and you say with that gratification. Um, that's powerful, Tiffany, that you shared that. We literally have set ourselves up. So in order for us, though, to get ahead of that, and this was something that he shared as well, is that it's so important that we have a sense of an awareness.
Right.
And one of the things that he shared was, in order for us to commence this process and kind of, get a handle on what are our habits. And I shared last, a couple of weeks ago, we didn't even think about some of the things that we do on a daily basis.
Mm-mm.
Brushing our teeth is a habit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Eating is a habit. These are classified as habits. And in order for us to, kind of get ahead of ourselves, we we should commence the process of assessing where we are today by tracking our habits and continuously making a conscientious effort to evaluate and monitor our progress. And why is this so important? And I'm going to go back to what you had shared and what you just shared. You had mentioned in our last podcast how you see patients and they come in, they're complaining about how they gained weight. Tiffany, this was so funny. How they gained weight. And you were like, so help me to understand. When did you notice that your weight was becoming out of control?
Like
Right?
when was it an issue?
Yeah,
Right.
like at what count did it become an issue for you? You
Right.
didn't
Like was it when your legs started rubbing together? I mean, we don't even think about that. Like we don't even think about our discomfort. Because at some point before you came to see me for phentermine, before you came to see me
right.
for Ozempic,
Uh-huh.
before you came to see me for these injectable and oral drugs for weight loss,
Uh-huh.
your legs didn't never rub together.
You didn't notice until you reached the 250th something pound.
And I'm
You
speaking
had to
from
come
experience with me
right.
because when I can tell now when I'm gaining weight, my
Uh-huh.
legs get closer together, and that
But,
bothers me.
but you know what,
So,
Tiffany? We become oblivious to our actions.
but we become
Because
oblivious because we've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable.
that is true.
And they're selling the idea of being big. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to go off on a tangent, but like with Lizzo, it's
Mm-hmm.
getting on my nerves. But
Mm-hmm.
I won't go off on a tangent on that. But
Yeah, I mean, we have, and even in our media, which is, I just feel like media needs to be so much more careful. But hey, that's the way that they make money. So, and we do live in a capitalistic society, which we'll talk about as well. But we live in this capitalistic society where we've allowed things to become the norm, you know, and then all of a sudden we just don't recognize these parasites, that we have allowed to grow within our mind and our body.
mhm.
And eventually it just takes over and gets a hold of us, and then we're out of control, right? So let's dive into, we can talk about this 1% rule, and we're going to continuously talk about it as we continue our conversations. But let's talk a little bit about the goals versus the systems. And I'll kick this section off with a quote that he shared. He stated, the purpose of setting goals is to win the game. And the purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. If we want to think about true long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's not about any one single accomplishment. It's more about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. Ultimately, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. So, goals versus system. What did you think about his thought process as it related to the two?
Well, and I think we kind of discussed this about how goals kind of seem final, right? They kind of seem like a destination as opposed to like a journey. So a goal is like, I finally got there, that was it. There's nothing else left to do. So people kind of just stop. But yeah, I thought that was powerful what he was saying about goals and goal setting. But then again, we talked about the contradiction of that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think we should be very careful. Goal setting, it is not obsolete. It definitely is something that it is important. It's extremely important. But I think, where we have to be mindful is the evolution of a goal, right? We have to learn to strengthen our approach to reaching our goal because it's important that we are progressive in our thought process. Think about, and you already brought this up, how often do you reach a goal and you just don't think about what is required to maintain, or you don't think about the need to continuously develop
It's
within
not
that
that,
goal.
it's not okay. So it depends on what you're doing, right? So let me take my profession, right?
Okay.
Nursing. So I reached the goal of becoming an RN, then to advanced practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a variety of different reasons of why I did it. But you're saying that we don't think of what it takes to maintain that goal. That's because it's already been thought out for me. So when you are goal setting or you have a system or process that's already been kind of set out for you, you become complacent. Because think about it, for example, with my advanced practice, they send me little cards and remind me when to do continuing education, when to renew my licensure, when to do this, when to do that. So that it's already thought out for me. But people who are say like freelancers or people who are out here like doing what you do, how you have your own businesses, you may not have those reminders. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's and I don't know, you can go so many different ways with that.
Yeah, but I think even if you do have those reminders, you can become complacent. For someone like me who doesn't have those reminders, and I have to constantly do research and reading and reading magazines, etc., um, you know, I can become complacent if I don't take an active approach to continuously furthering myself, right? Continuously growing within my industry.
Uh-huh.
So it is something that is important because when I shared earlier, this particular in our world, we're very goal focused,
Very.
and we don't really think about that need for continuous development that is required
We're so
for
goal
us.
focused to the point, and not to cut you off, we're so goal focused to the point where it dampens creativity.
Very true. Absolutely. And that's the problem. And that's the problem. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. because, we're not growing. We're not becoming this progressive society that we can. And I'm going to give you an example, you know, about the weight loss industry. The weight loss industry, it is such a profitable industry. And when I got into the industry, I was like, wow, we are really heavily goal focused, right? It's profitable because it is heavily goal focused and without much thought or consideration placed on sustainability and continued growth once your goal has been reached, right? And then what ends up occurring is that people get into these continuous cycles of gaining and losing weight, starting a program and stopping. And then now, guess what we have done? We noticed that behavior. Our marketers have noticed that behavior.
And it
Now
becomes a
we have
habit.
yeah, it becomes a habit, but we've learned how to capitalize on it now because we have established. Now, what are we about to do? We're about to go into the holiday season, right?
Right.
And during August until December, we're about to gain the holiday 15. They talk about the freshman 15. We're about to gain the holiday 15,
It
right?
was the 50. It was the freshman 50.
Oh, the freshman, no, it's 15, 50.
It was 50. You gained 50 pounds.
Okay, well, I did a 15. But anyway, so you gain so the freshman 15 has now become the holiday 50. Where we gain all this weight during the holiday season. And then what happens come January? What do they do? What are we pushing in?
Run to the doctor. They pushing gym memberships, YMCA, Planet Fitness, 24-hour fitness.
Right, because they know that they've created this system where it's cyclical and we can capitalize on it now, right? It's just our way to make money. We've really built this whole idea on our capitalistic mentality. And I also even see this in religion, right? We have all these grandiose ideas about how to get people to walk the life of Jesus or be like the prophet, but we don't really take into consideration, number one, that these beings were designed for a period of time that really no longer exists today. We judge, we give advice without the considerations of evolution. And
Right.
this, in turn, it has made many of us complacent even within our spiritual growth. And many have now started turning away from the idea of religion, especially the young people, right? Because it's too archaic and it's non progressive.
Right.
And then spiritual leaders have become complacent as well because they've created this habit of believing within themselves that their respective religion sells itself.
Mm.
And of course, at the end in the Bible and even in the Quran, there's nothing else to be had. There's no additional evolution to be had because God forbid you add on to it. God forbid you evolve what was shared, thus hindering growth.
Mm.
Right. And so, I mean, you can just see how these habits, they are really rampant, running rampant, especially the bad ones. We definitely, you guys were really trying to stay balanced here. But especially the bad ones, how they really run rampant in our lives and help us to become this very unprogressive society. So if you want
Taking
better
us
results,
backwards.
yeah, we're
We
going
bas-
backwards,
we basically walking backwards right now.
walking backwards,
Mhm.
right? And so if we want better results, we truly have to focus on designing our systems, right? Because we don't rise, as James Clear shared, we don't rise to the level of our goals. We will rise, and I'm going to add this, James, if you don't mind, or fall to the level of our systems. Right. So let's jump into outcome based versus identity based. And I'll start here with a quote to help, pull it all together. Many people, James shared that many people begin the process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. And this leads to us having outcome-based habits. Now, the
Mm.
alternative is to build identity-based habits. Because with this approach, we start by focusing on who we wish to become. Outcomes are about what you get, and identity is about what you believe, your worldview, your self image, your judgments about yourself and others. And most of the beliefs, assumptions, and biases that you hold are associated with this level.
But Toya, you know how complex that is? Do you know how complex that is, what you just said about the outcome versus identity based? Because if you think about it, it's much easier to you know how people who are like super nosy or always in somebody else's business, they do it honestly to distract from themselves for what they don't want to identify or for what they don't want to resolve with themselves. So outcome based habits are much easier to digest. Those are more palatable, or if I'm saying that word correctly. Yeah, those are much more palatable than identity, because you really have to dig. You have to dig when you're doing the identity based. When you're digging for the you have to dig. It's complex what you just said.
Yeah, it is complex. You have to dig, you have to have a level of belief within yourself that you truly want to become something different. And change, and I shared this before, change is very hard. People struggle with the idea of losing a piece of themselves that they have created, even if it's bad, even if it's bad. And but we have to get better at recognizing. We have to get better at recognizing how we can, if we truly want to change, how do we create this new identity? And it is all in our in how we think and how we speak. And he gave a good example. So hopefully I can pull this all together for you. Because he did share about individuals, and we talked about smokers in a couple episodes ago. You know, imagine two people who are trying to resist a cigarette. When offered a smoke, the first person says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." Okay. And then the other person says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Now, out of these two individuals, which one do you think is going to have long-standing success with quitting?
The one that says, I'm not a smoker.
Bingo, right? Because the first person, they believe that they are a smoker who is trying to be something else.
That was powerful when he said that. I remember that now.
Yes,
Because
yes.
I'm listening to these.
Uh-huh.
So I think that because of the way that I'm taking in the information,
Mm-hmm.
it does something different. You know, when you actually are reading versus when you're listening, you're absorbing the absorption of the information is a lot different.
Different. Yes, it is.
Yeah, you retain the information, but I do actually remember that, and I thought that was so powerful. Like, you have to play semantics with yourself, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You honestly have
Absolutely.
to play with what you tell yourself.
And it is about what you tell yourself. And then the more that you tell yourself this, the more that you start to have a belief around it, right? And when
Right.
I get to my song choice, I'm going to highlight that as well,
Oh,
because
okay.
the more that you tell yourself that you are this, and you're not really changing, right? But you're thinking about it. You'll be consistently just thinking about it. But if you make it finite, right? And you completely shift, or completely have a shift within your identity, then you will truly become what it is that you desire to become. And so he gave some more examples, and I'll highlight this. He said, the goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. I had to think about this one. I was like, not learn an instrument. So what is my goal? The goal is to become a musician. And I could give an example of this because he's right on that. I had a goal to learn how to play the piano. I played a couple songs. I was so excited. I played a couple songs. Yeah. I was like, ooh, holiday season about to come up. I'm about to be playing some music, right? And then I stopped. I don't do it anymore, right? I reached my goal. But if I thought about becoming a musician, I would have continued. I would have continued crafting, improving, etc. But I got so excited, I knew how to play some Bob Marley, and I said, "Oh, well, I'm done. Right, I'm done. I don't have to go any further." So I thought that was super powerful. That was super powerful. All right, so let's jump into, and I'm telling you guys, there's a lot of content in this book. We are only touching the surface. If you truly want to get the value out of everything in which we are discussing today, strongly, strongly encourage you, get the book. Okay.
Read the book.
Read the book. Exactly, Tiffany. Exactly. All right. All right. So let's jump into, and let me get on our next slide here, the science of a habit. Your habits are shaped by the systems in your life. To create a new good habit or to break a bad habit all depends on the systems in which we establish to manage the endeavor. And so here, James talks about how habits go through 4 stages, how to create them, and even how to create good ones and how to break bad ones. And he broke it down with, that habits go through 4 stages. You need a cue. And within that cue, how do you make creating a new habit? What are the cues that you need to make it more obvious? To break it, how do we make it invisible? Mm-hmm. When we're creating a habit, we have to make sure that in order for us to effectively create that habit, we have to develop a craving. How do we make that habit attractive? And if we want to break it, how do we make it unattractive? Mm-hmm. And then our response to that habit, how do we make this habit easier for us to digest, easier for us to accept, and easier for us to implement if we want to create a new habit? And then if it's a bad habit, how do we make it difficult to touch, difficult to reach, right? And then, of course, with all habits, we are a society that loves rewards. How do we make these habits satisfying or the bad ones unsatisfying? So essentially, he highlighted the cue recognizes the reward. The craving makes you want the reward. And the response helps you to obtain the reward, which is really the end goal of every habit. Now, the first 3 steps he highlighted, it is about delivering the behavior. The reward encourages repeated demonstration of that behavior. And if any of these steps are missing or lacking, it's going to be very difficult to form a habit. The 4 steps form an infinite cycle, if you will, known as the habit loop. And this loop, it can be divided into 2 phases. The first phase is the problem phase, comprised of the cue and the craving. You realize the need to change at this phase. And then the second phase is the solution phase, which is composed of the response and reward. And this phase is where you act and achieve your desired change. So what were your thoughts about that, Tiff?
I really enjoy processes. That's actually how I kind of think. My mind thinks in stages, it thinks in processes. And going back to, what I do for a living, I have to think in stages, in process. So this was relative to me. But what I got from this was because I have a lot of bad habits, was like the concept of throwing ideas away or deflection. So what I got from this, yeah, your habits go through 4 stages. However, how do you look at those 4 stages? I needed to combine and condense this, right, for me. So with the cue, craving, response, reward, I looked at how to get rid of bad habits. For me, that's really important because it retards my efforts, my growth. So I do a lot of deflection. So when I start, telling myself certain things about myself, I'll immediately replace it with a different thought. So for example, like, yes, something more positive. And I developed that habit, and the reward of doing that for me is at the end of the day, I have a better day. Because for me, all I'm trying to do is get to the end of the day.
So you're talking about it from the perspective of how you manage your day to day. And what in that, help me to understand the actual habit that you feel you have. Is it that you're not, you're not enjoying what you're doing?
Like, it's like imposter syndrome. Like, I'm just here. I don't know necessarily whether or not I believe I don't necessarily believe I deserve to be here, where I am, even though I worked hard, even though I know I studied my butt off, even though I know what I know, it's like a constant, it's like a mental block that, tells me that I'm an imposter. And a lot of people who are type A personality, who have a lot of drive, a lot of self-motivation, who are goal setters, they have that. Like, think of your goats, and these people that are termed greatest of all time. They are in places and spaces sometimes where they're like, do I even deserve to be here, when they are considered a GOAT? You know what I mean? Like, so I tell myself a lot, a lot of bad things, and sometimes the thoughts are just so intrusive.
Right.
That I was getting into a habit of that. And like you said, with habits, you start to believe that. Your mind starts to believe what you're telling it. So I just started feeding myself a different way. He just put it in a stage. He just put it in a process.
Right. Yeah, well, that process was very helpful. He also shared within this, some techniques and considerations when we are developing our, the process or leveraging the process that he shared here today. And as I mentioned, we're not going to go through this because we could be here all day doing and speaking about this book, but how we have to develop our processes around making sure we have better cues, cravings, our response, and the rewards. Some of the processing, I'll just touch on a couple of them at a very high level, was the implementation intention, which is a plan for when and where to perform the intended action. He talked about habit stacking, And the example that he used here was, after I eat dinner, which is a habit, a form of a habit, I will update my gratitude journal. If one of your thoughts was, I want to learn how to do more effective journaling. He talked about our environment and how we have to be mindful of our environment, and does it support our new habit formation or does it derail it? He jumped into self-control. How much control do we possess in ourselves? Do we know how to create a disciplined environment? And he also discussed about family and friends. Identifying our tribe, and our family and friends does not necessarily, when we say family, it's about more tribal family. Individuals that you were equally yoked with, making sure that you find a tribe whose normal behavior is associated with your desired behavior. And so here, so hopefully you got a better understanding about the science behind it.
Mhm.
He goes into more depth with regards to how to effectively um, leverage that process, those stages, how to create them most effectively in order to create or remove a habit. Now let's jump into, and we just have a couple slides here to go, good to great. How do we go from being good at something to being just great? And he talked about building habits. Uh, or I'll start off and kick off with a quote here where he shared, building habits in the present will allow you to do more of what you want in the future. And so, really, when we want to go from being good to great, we should make sure that we are aligning ourselves with our natural abilities. The secret to maximizing our odds of success is to choose the right field of competition. And it's just as true with habit change as it is within the sports industry or the business industry. Habits are easier to perform and they are more satisfying to stick with when they align with our natural inclination and abilities. And and Tiffany, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about this, but I want to preface this with a thought that came to my mind when I read about how do we go from being good to great. And it made me think about how often we are pushed into the wrong industry because of our environment, by friends or family who believe that it will make money or lead us to notoriety. And it's very difficult for most people to align their transferable skills with any other career because we are just not designed to think like that. And most will pick a role or industry and then that's it, right? And then they focus and they hone in. We're always told to find our niche. And then when life or fate forces us to transition or develop new ways, we crash and burn.
Mhm.
And so, in that respect, I do believe James, he's right here. I believe that, in order to be successful, make sure the constructive habits that we attempt to create are aligned to our inclinations and our abilities. However, and I think I shared this with you when we were a bit offline, I want to challenge us to practice agility, to practice flexibility, and learn how to find success and build the right habits in any environment. And so, for example, my background is in HR. But when my life started heading south all on its own, I had to develop new habits to survive, habits around my health, my career, and my livelihood to find success. I had to I had to be like water and flow within the storms that were carving new terrain for me to navigate. And James Clear, he talks about this a little later in the book when he addresses your belief systems and how they hold you back. He says we should keep our identity small. The more that we let a single belief define us, the less capable we are of adapting when life challenges us. And
Which is why motherhood is a good example of that.
mhm. Yeah,
When
elaborate on that.
you when you when you let a single belief define you. Mothers are taught that. You're taught motherhood is this or that, and that's who you are.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
You can stay at home as well too. Also, we're going to take your shoes off because we want you to be barefoot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and also you're going to wear an apron. You're going to wear an apron, and in probably 13 more months, you'll probably be pregnant again.
Mm-hmm.
So in motherhood, that's a good example of
But I would say we have
a lot.
evolved, right, around that because
We
I
have, and
talk
women are
about
working outside of the home.
this. Mm-hmm.
That's embraced, or potentially it's embraced. But I don't know if you notice we are walking backwards if you look at the information about, I mean, the uproar about abortion.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Well, some of our rights are being taken away from us, right? Yeah.
Right, but just trying to place the woman
Back.
back into that single belief
Mm-hmm.
system of
Well,
where women should be.
we'll talk about that too because abortion is about the plight of a particular ethnic group, right?
Uh-huh.
Abortion is all about making sure that there's a continuous flow of, of people or a particular ethnic group. But we'll talk about that. That's a whole nother
Yeah,
conversation.
that's a whole right. I just wanted to give the example
Right,
of
right. But
popped
but
in my
yeah,
head.
but yes, but you are right. The whole idea of a woman and being pregnant, barefoot, over the kitchen stove, etc. But I will say we have definitely made progress in that area because we now do believe that women can do so much more. Matter of fact, when women are in areas where they are leading and managing, you tend to find that things move a little bit more smoothly. And we think holistically a little bit more holistically about our approach into management. Once again, though, another topic for another day. Okay. But yeah, so he talked about that. The more that we let a single belief define you, the less capable we are of adapting when life challenging you. And it's funny, as I was going through this whole entire process, I literally heard Bruce Lee. I call him my ancestor, but Bruce Lee was in my ear saying, be water, my friend, be water. So jumping in real quick, the Goldilocks rule. The Goldilocks rule, James had stated here, it is that human experience. The Goldilocks rule states that the human experience, peak motivation, when we're talking about working on tasks, we should work on tasks that are right on the edge of our current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, but just right. It's all about how do we, when we're going through the process of creating and establishing a habit, how do we stay motivated? However, right, because when we think about creating a habit, creating a good constructive habit, there's a lot of repetition involved in it. And as a result, on the flip side of that, you will find a level of boredom, and we have to be mindful as to how do we maintain that motivation. And James highlighted, hey, we got to learn to get comfortable with boredom because it can be the greatest threat to our success. And really, even really successful people feel the same lack of motivation as everyone else. The difference is that they still find a way to show up despite the feelings of boredom. So, for example, professionals, they will stick to the schedule. Amateurs, they let life get in the way. Professionals, they know what is important to them and will work towards their purpose. Amateurs get pulled off course by the urgencies of life. Did you have some thoughts around that?
In my profession, um, day in and day out. People have no idea how hard medicine and nursing really is. Like it is very difficult when you're managing, someone else's health. They, whether it was intentional or not, they messed it up. Not you, but you got to figure it out how to fix them. And it better be a good plan or you gonna get sued. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
So within your profession, you definitely have to, just to go back to what we shared about making sure that, and this actually is a great segue about how you should avoid the trap of complacency, right?
mhm,
You have to really master your profession. You have
mhm,
to make sure that you understand the ins and outs. And if you don't, make sure that you go and get the knowledge that is needed so that you don't decline in your performance.
mhm.
And avoiding that trap of complacency. We talked about, or in James' book, it talked about how science shows that once a habit is mastered, you will decline in performance,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
It's
improve.
true.
Yeah,
You
and
cut corners. You start
you
cutting
do.
corners.
Yes, you do. You start cutting corners, and you don't take the time to continue to develop yourself, because improvement, when you think about improvement, it's not just about learning habits, it's also about fine tuning them. And the way that we do that is to make sure that we continuously are doing it through reflection and reviews, ensuring that we spend time on the right things, right? And make course corrections whenever necessary. And I liken, like when you say that, I'd like to liken this. I liken this to, have you ever had a performance review at work? Generally, it review you have a review every year. It occurs two times. You have one semi-annually and annually. And in order to ensure that you are being progressive in your approach to managing your habits, you should always conduct an assessment. And in this book, James, he covers a series of questions that you should ask yourself, that you should think about semi-annually and annually, so that you can ensure continued growth.
Mhm.
All right, so let's jump in here. We're going to wrap it up with make it last. And I am ending with the beginning. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life, by Lao Tzu. So one of the things that I really liked about, how do we make our habits last? How do we make them sustainable and they stick, right? We have to really find beauty in managing our habits by thinking big, but taking a more digestible approach to finding success. We have to remember that small improvements can lead to big results. We have to continuously refine our system. Don't become complacent. Always think about, am I becoming complacent? Review yourself two times a year and ask yourself those tough questions. Ask yourself if you're going in the right direction, or if you are going in the wrong direction, identifying what it is that you need to do to get to course correct and get back on track. Success, as James shared, it is not a goal to reach or a finish line to cross. It is it is a system to improve, an endless process to refine. If you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem probably isn't you. The problem is your system. Because bad habits, they repeat themselves again and again, not because you don't want to change, but because you have the wrong system for change. I'll close with this: develop the right system, and you will find success. Did you have anything else you'd like to share with us, Tiff?
No, I just hope that our listeners are in tune and that we are providing them with some pearls of knowledge and what we come to understand from the different books that we will review over the next coming months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, definitely. I agree. I concur. All right. So, of course, we are, folks, lovers of music. And as we wrap up each of our episodes, we love to share with you a song choice that really spoke to us as we were going through the process of developing this content for you. And of course, it's my week. I get to select our song choice. And so I will tell you, and I told you Tiffany is like, oh Lord, here goes Toy with her sad music. And it is quite sad. But I was so torn between Amy Winehouse's Rehab and Linkin Park's Breaking Bad Habits. Both songs, they highlight two troubled artists, musicians, Amy Winehouse and Chester Bennington, who were both a leading force within their craft. But unfortunately, due to depression and drugs, their bad habits led to their demise. We can all learn from their plights in life, and we hope that what we have discussed here today will help get you on the right path to reaching or maintaining your success. So, Tiff, in preparation, because we are done with Atomic Habits, I have to ask you, have you ever wanted to do something but got in your own way?
Of course.
24/7, right?
Right.
So let me tell you this, folks don't want to miss our next episode because we are really going to dig down super duper deep about why do we do this? We're going to talk about self-sabotage as we begin the review of our next book, The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wyeth. So please make sure that you join us. We do look forward to you joining us. And of course, in preparation for our discussions, we have included in the description where you can pick up a copy of the book. To access all replays or learn more about Kinky Knots Cafe's Proactive is the Way, please visit www.kinkyknotscafe.com. Proactive is the way, my friends. Take good care.